Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to the channel here. We got a review of Doom: The Dark Ages here. Doom's the latest game, in the obviously legendary Doom series here. But before we hop into this, I kind of just want to take a second and thank you guys for the recent support. Not only the views, the likes, the shares, the comments, and everything, as per usual, but the subscribers. We did pass a somewhat, I guess you could call it, I'm not sharing a Mr. Beast or even a silver play button here, but we got over 100 subscribers. We got into the triple digits, 100 plus, 105 as I'm looking at it right now. And I just want to thank you guys. I know, again, it's not some massive PewDiePie or Mr. Beast type of level of anything here, but it means a lot to me. It shows growth, and I can't thank you guys enough for that. I'm just happy that I can provide content that entertains, informs, or that you guys enjoy for whatever reason. I try to be informative and entertainment, but I'm happy that I can do that for you guys. I'd still do this. This isn't about subscribers and money or anything. I do this if one person was watching or all 8 billion people on the earth were watching here. But it does help a lot with the motivation and knowing that I'm, entertaining and informing, at least somewhat for you guys. They're just rambling. But yeah, just want to thank you guys on that. Can't thank y'all enough. Support means a lot in any way, subscriber or not. And yeah, let's just hop into the full-on review here of Doom: The Dark Ages, newest game in the Doom trilogy, just released. As you guys will see this uploaded just a couple days here. Very new game. It's out on console and console and PC as of now. All the footage you're seeing recorded here, very early gameplay from I guess essentially the trailer zone and like the first level of the game, all being recorded on an Xbox Series X. This is the Game Pass version of the game. So it is like they generally give you like the premium version of the game or whatever, which is just a different skin, doesn't really alter a ton of the game. But yeah, so that's all the footage you're seeing. Try not to do a lot of heavy spoilers here, or show a bunch of late game important kind of zones and cutscenes and everything. But yeah, spoiler warning. I guess if you don't want to see any of this, I don't know why you click on it in the first place. Regardless, if any cutscenes do pop up, that is that. But yeah, so hopping into the review here, a pretty solid game. If you just zoom out and look at 2025 as a whole, not even comparing to other Doom games or Doom-like games, one of the better games that has so far come out in 2025. Again, the year's not even as of now halfway over yet. It's still pretty early on. Obviously, major games like GTA 6 and stuff have been delayed, but this is one of the better games that's come out this year. Doom, a series that seemingly never fully misses. It's always a lot of fun. It's always high action, high octane. Just turn your brain off, kill some fucking demons, enjoy some, heavy metal music or rock music there, and just slay fucking demons. That's kind of been the bread and butter of the series forever. And this series, or this particular game, while it does do some stuff differently from past Doom editions, as most do and try to innovate and change things, still keeps that core principle pretty similar, but again, it changes a few mechanics as well as takes some new liberties in games that we haven't really seen as much of in the last games, particularly in the story. If you've been a fan of the Doom series for a long time, it's been around, I believe, longer than I've been alive. But regardless, the game has never been exactly well known and incredibly revered for its storytelling. Doom has a story, there is a lore to it, but the game, it's not The Witcher. It's, it's not this very in-depth, story-rich. It's not even Space Marine 2 level of story. But this game in Doom Dark Ages, it has more cutscenes, it has more cinematic, cutscenes and shows here. It tries to flesh out the story and follow and get you to follow along and get you invested in a lot more than a lot of other Doom games do. So there's definitely a heavy emphasis on that. Another thing that they do that I think is better than especially Eternal, but really most of the Doom games here is the boss fights. Heavy emphasis is put on that. Obviously, it looks better because the game in general looks better as being newer. But the boss mechanics, the boss fights, probably my favorite of the Doom series that I've played, anyways. Which is the modern ones. So it was like A little messing around in like Doom 1 and 2. I like the bosses quite a bit. The fights are good. The bosses are interesting. It was great. That and the storytelling, I think, was the best in the Doom series. Again, not a very high bar to beat, I guess, for this series, but still appreciate it. And I do like how they change stuff up every Doom game. Obviously, another big, I guess, difference here is the setting. There's a medieval Doom. Haven't really had that. That's a cool new kind of setting and coat of paint to put on Doom, as well as the improved graphics that comes with time, of course. Definitely a nice little scenario here, or a nice little setting and backdrop for this Doom game. That, along with the more story-rich Doom than we've seen in the past, definitely, I guess, kind of bring this game alive a little more than some of the other games. But overall, I've been kind of, I would almost say glazing, but having a lot of praise for this game, and it's rightfully so. The game is fun. It runs well. It looks great. The setting's cool. The cinematic cutscenes and storytelling is better. The boss fights are cooler and better. But getting into kind of some of the nitty gritty of this game, again, not saying this game is bad. It's a far above average game. One of the better games that's come out this year. I can't remember the entire lineup of what's all coming out this year, but wouldn't surprise me if this is top 10, top 5 game for sure. Doom always hits, it's mindless fun. Kill some fucking demons in gruesome ways. Always a lot of cool fun here. But some things I didn't particularly like. Some of the levels didn't feel incredibly interesting. The tutorial level is a good example of that, like collecting keys, clearing zones, going back to zones, closing portals, stuff like that. Not the most interesting zones here for some of them. On top of that, I guess combat, you could say, wasn't amazing. I don't think it was better in a lot of the mechanics and combat ways and the level design and everything than something like Doom Eternal, for example. I don't think this game was as good as Doom Eternal. Just from like, obviously it's newer, it looks prettier, whatever, it's a different setting. But I don't think this game overall was better than Doom Eternal or Doom 2016. That being said, it's a good game still. But yeah, getting back to the point there, the weapons, they have a variance. Obviously, you see some of the weapons here that get early on in the game. There is some variance in the weapons, but there's not a lot of need to use really or switch between a lot of weapons or use a lot of different weapons here. You can kind of get away with really whatever you want, I guess, but just using kind of the three kind of basic weapons here for the entire game, I don't know, it's a little bland, I guess. The combat, the parrying, the finishing, again, you get the heavy metal soundtrack in, you get a lot of action, a lot of enemies in one zone, some bigger boss fights in here. There's a lot going on. It stimulates you a lot, I guess. So when you're playing it, it doesn't necessarily always feel like that. But like this is seen, for example, when you're doing these like little fights here with the enemies, you don't have to switch up a lot of weapon variants. A lot of the attack sequences aren't particularly difficult or in depth. The game itself, whether you're on the easiest or hardest or anything in between difficulties, isn't particularly difficult. It's not like a Dark Souls game by any stretch of the imagination in that regard. It's not particularly difficult. There's not a lot of variance in enemy attacks and what you use weapon wise, and not a lot of variances in the violence, I guess, in the finishing moves and how things die and how you approach situations, I guess. Especially, I don't want this to be a comparison video to Space Marine 2. They're two different universes, obviously, but I think they're two similar type of game styles. And I couldn't help but think, after playing a game like Space Marine 2, a Doom style game, if you will, that it's almost better than Doom in a lot of ways, or Doom the Dark Ages in a lot of ways here. The storytelling and the cinematic cutscenes and the world building obviously are a lot richer in 40K. That's to be expected with a universe like that. But even the combat, there was a lot of weapon variants. There's a lot of reason to use a lot of different weapons and classes and the operations and the campaigns. There was a lot of different interesting things you could do with those. There was a lot of different interesting enemies and ways you killed those enemies, how you interacted with them, and how they interacted with you. There was a lot of variance that kept things fresh throughout the somewhat relatively short campaign, but really good campaign and operations. Like Doom, The Dark Ages, not a particularly long game either. it just felt more varied and it felt more exciting. Even something as simple, but I think is a really big deal when you're playing a game like these, as the executions and the finishing moves. In Doom, essentially, once you've done enough damage and hit the enemy enough, they have this purple glow to them. You can hit the right stick on the Xbox. I don't know how it is on PC. It finishes them with like this big Doom guy punch. They die. All the stuff comes out. It's just like a really big like finishing move, I guess. In Space Marine 2, you have a finishing move. It's a really fucking gruesome fucking execution where you're tearing them limb from limb, stabbing the Tyranid claw back into him, or you're like dismantling a Chaos Space Marine. You have the dust come out of them, and it varies depending on what type of enemy it is and what type of weapons you're using to do the finishing move. Is it chainsaw? Is it a combat knife? Is it a power sword, a hammer, a power fist? What are you using? What type of enemy it is, and what type of stuff you have to kill them with. It kept things really interesting. It looked visually very pleasing. The combat just seemed a lot more fluid. There was a lot more interactions with it. It was a more difficult game overall, as I say, as I just die in the clip there. But regardless, continuing anyways. But yeah, it's just I don't know. I don't want it to be a comparison to Space Marine 2, but when you play the game somewhat closely, I've been playing Space Marine 2, kind of on and off even to this day, but when you play the games so close side by side here, you can't help but compare the two games, and you can't help but think Doom: The Dark Ages is kind of a weaker example of a similar type of game scenario here. Not to say again, the game is very good. I just don't think it's necessarily on the same level, and I don't think the combat wise, especially. But that being said, again, it's mindless fun. It's still a good time. I'd recommend buying it, especially if it goes on sale or if you have Game Pass on Xbox like I do. Definitely worth picking up. You're missing out on some really good fun here, and it's unique. It's fun. I say Space Marine 2 is great, but there's only so much you can do in Space Marine 2 until eventually it gets old too. You might as well try and hop into a new universe and do this as well if you're a big fan of that. But that being said, it tried some new things. I appreciate that for sure. It was a really interesting setting and a really good approach and interesting approach at kind of the story of the whole Doom thing with the more interactive cutscenes and stuff like that. The boss fights were better, but that's kind of where it ends. It's an above average Doom game. If I was going to give it a score out of 10, I'd say it's a 7 out of 10. It's a good game. It is a good, fun little, action shooter here, as Doom always is, in an interesting setting with some cool revamped features and mechanics. But it doesn't do anything fantastic. It's not a generational game. It's not a game of the year. It's not fucking, out of this world awesome or must see type of stuff. It doesn't reinvent the wheel necessarily. Something like the Space Marine 2. It's just a good game. It's an above average game, and that's kind of where it is. Another thing to note on Doom, pretty famous for its music. As expected, the soundtrack for it wasn't quite as good as Doom's 2016 and Doom Eternal. That was to be expected, obviously, with the different people. It was going to be different, probably most likely going to be slightly. I don't know. I'm not trying to hate on them, but it's not quite as hard hitting or awesome as the past Dooms. It does the job. It still gets you in the mood. It still fills the atmosphere and fits the scene very well. But like you're not looking up on Spotify the Doom playlist to add to your playlist. It's not the best one they've done. It doesn't get you in this like fucking, Slayer mode, I guess you could say if you want to be real dramatic about it. But it's a solid playlist. It's just a bit of a downgrade. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on Doom: The Dark Ages here. Can't help but think it's a bit of a step back in some ways and a bit of a step forward in some ways to the past Dooms. Overall, it's an above average game. It's a pretty fun game. I'd recommend picking it up, especially if it's on sale or Game Pass. You'd be foolish not to. It's a lot of fun. It's not super long. It doesn't fill you with mindless, content to do for like 80 hours of doing the same things over and over again just to get to like the cool boss fights or the end of the game. Doesn't stuff the content full for no reason like a lot of other games have been doing these times. It's I can't I have to check the like time to complete thing or whatever, but I want to say it's the ballpark of like 15 hours, probably a bit less, honestly. It is not super long. It's a lot of, quick, fun, stimulating action. It, tells a fairly compelling and interesting, kind of goofy but interesting story there, especially for a Doom game standard. I definitely recommend picking up. It's a 7 out of 10 game. It's a solid ass game, probably one of the best games that's released in 2025 so far. And yeah, it's just overall pretty interesting there. And yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on Doom: The Dark Ages there. Definitely recommend picking it up. It's a solid game. Just be aware that if you're a huge fan of Doom Eternal or Doom 2016, you might be either pleasantly surprised at the changes or not what you're looking for. And don't expect a game that's going to blow your socks off or give you one of the best games of all time. It's simply going to give you a very fun, kind of short burst of heavy action fun. That's what Doom games are about. Does it pretty well. Can't complain too much. But yeah, those are my thoughts. I'd love to hear what you guys think about it down in the comments below. Let me know what your experiences of Doom: The Dark Ages is and what your thoughts are in the game or any questions you have. Again, thank you for viewing this video. Thank you for all the subscribers and getting us over triple digits here. I can't thank you guys enough. It really means a lot to me, and I'm glad I can do this for you guys. And you're enjoying the content, obviously. If you enjoyed this video on the channel, I encourage you to like and subscribe. Definitely helps out, as I've been saying. And yeah, that's it for the 7 out of 10 game on the Uncle Sam scale, I guess. Doom: The Dark Ages. Fun, action-packed Doom at its finest here, in a very new setting. Definitely worth the pick up if you're looking for something new, fun to play. Definitely checks every box, and you're going to have a blast for a good, 10 to 15 hours or so. But yeah, that about does it. Have a good one, and I'll see y'all in the next video.